What is going on, everybody? We are back with our team reviews. We're down to our last 5 teams. We're on to the San Francisco 49ers today, a very interesting team. Always an interesting team, especially for fantasy. Joined by my father, Jeff. August 22nd. Excited for football, Dad. I think we're 16 days away from kickoff.
Yep. And the Lions are going to beat the Chiefs on the first night.
Better back that up. You got to pick them in our football pool. That's
I will.
Every year.
I will.
Yeah, it'd be awesome to see. I wouldn't. Yeah, it'd be awesome to see. It would be awesome. I mean, last year it was usually the Super Bowl team. You know, I think it was one year where they didn't play on that first Thursday a couple years ago, but most of the time they do, and most of the time they win. Although last year the Rams got their butt kicked by the Buffalo Bills. So we'll see. We will see for sure. But anyways, we're talking about the 49ers today. As always, redraft football. We'll throw in Dynasty. We'll throw in, real life football stuff. This is all of our rankings and our points. When you hear averages, points per game, they're all half PPR based, just so you know, kind of right in the middle. And we'll get started with the quarterback, Mr. Irrelevant, the stud, Brock Purdy, who was officially announced as the starting quarterback. Was that like a few days ago, or was that like 2 weeks ago? I don't even remember. But pretty sure he was officially announced as the starter. Interesting quarterback room. Brock Purdy obviously came on last year due to injuries up the wazoo with the 49ers, which is kind of, they're like the Chargers in that sense. They're just always have guys injured. I don't know why it is, but it seems like it. But yeah, Brock Purdy. He was, when he took over as the starter, I believe it was week 13, where he played a majority of the game. He was the quarterback 9 from week 13 to 18. So that's a starting quarterback in your fantasy leagues. He was doing it because he threw a lot of touchdowns. He threw 2 touchdowns in every game he played in last year during the regular season, and then a couple 3-touchdown games, I believe. 1 3-touchdown game. And in the playoffs, he had a 3-touchdown game. So, Dad, Brock Purdy. How are you approaching Brock Purdy this year? In a 1 quarterback league, you want him as a starter or more as a backup?
Probably a backup. I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. What was his quarterback ranking when he was playing?
QB 9 overall.
Yeah.
So, but again, it was just to go over it again. You know, he was doing that because of touchdowns. He had 2 touchdowns in every game he played in. He had 3 in one of those. He wasn't throwing for a lot of yards and things like that. So go ahead.
Yeah, I think I would just kind of pass on him for a number 1 quarterback. But I could see having him as a number 2 quarterback, maybe somebody like him and Matt Stafford on my team, or him and Daniel Jones, or, just some lesser known quarterbacks, just have a couple of the middle of the road guys.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't, I definitely wouldn't take him as my QB1. But I like to have a little bit of upside as my backup for my backup quarterbacks. And just looking at the guys going around to him, Derek Carr, Stafford, I know what those guys are going to do. Give me Brock Purdy. Give me Bryce Young. Give me Kyler Murray or Jordan Love. Give me these guys where there's some upside intrigue. We talked about it. Brock Purdy, QB9. Can he sustain that? We'll see. But he's on an amazing offense. The system is amazing because they are kind of zigging when everyone's zagging. They have devalued the quarterback somehow. And they've increased the value on running backs, which is basically not what people are doing in today's NFL. It's the opposite. But Kyle Shanahan's proving you put kind of any quarterback in this system and they can succeed because look at the guys he's throwing to. So, yeah, I don't really expect much. I don't want him as my QB1, but I'm fine with him as my QB2. And it's, going on to the backups. Interesting group. We got Sam Darnold there. We got Trey Lance there. Trey Lance does not look good in preseason, unfortunately. But if he ever were to be the starter, man, there's some intrigue there because the guy's going to run for 60 yards a game. And we know what those kind of players do in fantasy. So these are names to keep an eye on. Sam Darnold, I think, is going to be the QB2. I personally think that. And if he takes over, everything we just said for Brock Purdy, repeat it for Sam Darnold, because Sam Darnold's going to be a viable starter or a bench piece or a spot starter if he's the starting quarterback for the 49ers, because he's going to do exactly what Brock Purdy does. So, and then Trey Lance, Dad, anything you have to say about Trey Lance? Like,
not really.
Man.
I mean, I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. I don't care how much he's going to run.
Yeah.
You know, so he's not going to. To me, he doesn't project into a full season. You know, on any team, whether he gets traded. So, you know, even on the 49ers, it's going to be Sam Darnold who's the backup, probably. So,
yeah, man, it's kind of unprecedented stuff. Like, they traded up 3 first-round picks for him, took him 3rd overall. Like, I don't think if he doesn't play anymore, he has to be the biggest bust in NFL history, because like he would just never have played. Like, at least like Ryan Leaf and Jamarcus Russell played in games. You know, they were bad, but they played, and those are considered the top 2 busts, I would say. But they played 30 games or whatever they played. This guy hasn't played anything. Like, which makes me to believe I would, if you can buy him super low in Dynasty, I think I would, just to hold on. I'm saying super low. Don't give up a first and maybe even a 2nd-round pick for him. If someone just is out on him, buy him super low. I think he will get a chance somewhere at some point. I don't think it's going to be with the 49ers unless there's injuries. So he will get a shot. And then who knows what he turns into. But yeah, that's it for the quarterbacks. The running backs, there's not much to say about McCaffrey. The guy's a stud. Perennial top 1 pick in fantasy football since basically entering the league. The guy's been a stud. Was injured for a couple years there and burned a lot of people. So I think a lot of people were kind of out on him maybe last year a little bit. But if you took him last year, you were super happy because he played the whole year. He played the whole year and he was awesome. Not much to say. Again, we look at this from a half PPR. So because of that, I would say that I'm fine with McCaffrey as the 101 over Jefferson, over Chase, because it's half PPR and running backs are a little more valuable. Dad, any arguments there? McCaffrey 101?
No arguments for me. I'd be all in on this guy.
Yeah, and especially on this offense, like, the dude's a stud. He was RB2 last year behind Eckler, but he averaged that included that game where he was traded to the 49ers and hardly played. So I think if he played that was a full game, he would have been the RB1 last year. I don't think he's going to get back to like his 2019 year where he was like 29 points a game in PPR. It was insane, but he's just going to be really good. So Elijah Mitchell, I know he was hurt. Dad, is he still hurt?
I was just trying to look at that, and I don't see an injury designation after his name. I like Elijah Mitchell. The problem is, you can't get him to play. I still would be in on Elijah Mitchell. And he looked good. He looks good when he's got the ball in his hands. He produces. Again, we all know there's some injury problems there. So, if he's your running back 3, he's gonna get touches. Even when McCaffrey was playing, Elijah Mitchell was getting the ball, and he was getting the touches. So,
yeah,
where does he fit on a fantasy team? For me, if he's like an RB3, slightly even an RB2, maybe not an RB2, RB3. I'm kind of thinking past my means here, but
Yeah,
I
you
like.
don't even,
Go
you
ahead.
can get him. I was saying you can get him way further than that. Like if you want him as your like RB5 or 6, he's going 120th overall, like 10th round. So
I'd take him.
yeah, I mean he has the value, like you said. He's going to get the ball. He's going to get carries. They're not going to be high value stuff. Unfortunately, he's not going to be the catches. Maybe not even the goal line guy, but he has that extreme value if McCaffrey gets hurt. So yeah, I'd take him in the 10th round. I'm fine with that. He'll basically be a bench piece at that point that you kind of hold on to and see if McCaffrey gets hurt. So beyond that, Jordan Mason, I think he might get cut. I don't know. Tyrion Davis-Price, second year there. We'll see. Names to know because 49ers running backs always seem to get hurt. So keep those guys in your mind, but they're going to be waiver wire guys for sure. And another thing to keep in mind is ever since Kyle Shanahan has been the head coach of the 49ers, they've had a different leading rusher every year since 2017. So keep that in mind. And that continued last year with McCaffrey. So it was Carlos Hyde in 2017, and then it was Matt Breida.
Jeez.
Matt Breida in 2018. And then you had Raheem Mostert in 2019. I think you had Jeff Wilson in 2020. Let me see. Yeah, Jeff Wilson in 2020. You had 2021 was Elijah Mitchell. And then last year you had McCaffrey was their leading rusher. So will that continue? Who knows? The receivers. Well, I know I didn't even mention this. We talked about it pre-show before we recorded. That these 49ers are, I think, the only team in the NFL that has 4 fantasy players going in the top 5, maybe even top 6 rounds, where one of those guys aren't a quarterback. So you have McCaffrey, you have Debo, you have Ayuk, and you have Kittle, all going in the top 5 or 6 rounds, which is crazy. No other teams like that. The Bengals have Chase, Higgins, Mixon, and then they have Burrow. The Chargers have Allen, Eckler, maybe Mike Williams sneaks in there, and then Herbert, and maybe a couple other teams out there that have that. But 49ers are the only team where you got 4 of these skill position players being drafted. And it's like, man, can they all return value? So I think it's an interesting conversation. The first one we're going to talk about is Debo. Dad, very polarizing guy. You're either kind of in or out on Debo. I want to hear your opinion. Are you in or are you out on Debo? If you're in on him, keep in mind he's still going late 3rd round, maybe early 4th round is where he's going. Are you in on Debo Samuel?
Yeah, I think I'm in on him. I know he missed some games. His touchdowns were off a little bit last year. I think 2021 he had 8 rushing touchdowns. So let's just say right now that's probably not going to happen again. So last year he had 3 rushing touchdowns, and I know that's a big part of his fantasy game. I know he's a wide receiver, but he's part of that 49ers rushing attack. They're going to use him. They paid the guy a lot of money, so I think I'm in on him. Hopefully, he had quite a year. 2021 was obviously, I don't want to call it an anomaly, but 1,400 yards receiving, and then 8 rushing touchdowns. Those are some huge fantasy numbers. So,
yeah.
But last year that kind of dipped down a little bit. He got hurt. So,
yeah. I'm 100% in on Debo for a few different reasons. One, I think when he steps on the field, there's an argument that he's the best offensive player on the field. Yeah, McCaffrey's there, whoever else is on the other team, but you can argue that Debo is the best player. I think he's that good. I mean, just watch the guy with the ball in his hands. It's amazing. Maybe he's not the most amazing route runner and all this, but man, you get the ball in his hands and people just cannot tackle him. So I love that. You mentioned it with the carries. He had in his big year 59 carries. Don't think it gets back to that level, but he still had 42 last year, which is super, super valuable. Usually receivers average about 6 yards a carry. So you get 40 carries Like basically just add 250 to 300 yards to whatever total receiving yards you think Debo is going to get, which is super valuable. And people are going to say, well, McCaffrey's there. They're not going to run him. That didn't change when McCaffrey was there. I went back and looked. Debo was still getting about 2 to 3 rushes a game, even when McCaffrey was there, when they traded for McCaffrey. So I think it was about 2.5 rushes a game. You extrapolate that, that's 43 carries. So that's not far off from, it's less than what he had in 2021, but it's still very significant. And also the last thing I'll say is Debo, there was only 5 games in which Brock Purdy was the starter. Debo, and I made a video about this, so you guys can watch it as well more in depth, but 5 games where Brock Purdy was the starter, and then Debo, Ayuk, McCaffrey, and Kittle were all healthy. There's only 5 games. 2 of those were in the playoffs. One of the playoffs, there's 3 in the playoffs. One of them I didn't count because Brock Purdy blew out his elbow. So the 2 playoff games and then 3 regular season games in which, again, Purdy was the starter and all 4 of those guys were healthy. Debo was he was pretty well ahead of everyone else in terms of the targets. He had the same amount of targets as Christian McCaffrey. And he was still getting the rushes. Ayuk was last on that list in targets. Kittle was last on that list in targets, and Ayuk was second to last. So Debo was still the guy. And then you look in the playoffs, Debo was the guy. They were giving him, in the 3 playoff games, he had 13 carries. Again, almost 3 a game. He had 22 targets. He had 13 catches. He had 200 yards in those 3 games. And that includes, again, a game where they didn't have a quarterback. So, and last thing I'll say, all those numbers that I mentioned, Debo getting a majority of the targets and receptions, that included a game where Debo left in the second quarter. So it was more like 4.5 games for Debo, 5 for everyone else. So I just think he's going to be still their focal point. They paid him. He knew he played terribly last year, and he is kind of promised that he'll change that. He'll get back to where he was before. So I'm kind of all in on Debo this year for sure. And that kind of transitions into the next guy, Brandon Ayuk. I'm kind of out on Brandon Ayuk. I know people love him. He had 1,000 yards last year. People are super high on him. I think he's a really good receiver. I think if he was on another team as like the number 2 option, he'd be great for fantasy. But on this team, I can kind of see him being at best the 3rd targeted player and maybe even the 4th. That's kind of where I'm at with Ayuk. I think when you have Debo, Ayuk, Kittle, McCaffrey on the field, Ayuk's going to be more of that field stretcher role. Not that that's all he is, but more of that field stretcher. I don't think that plays into Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy was Mr. Relevant for a reason. He doesn't have a great arm. And I just think that plays more into the skills of Debo and Kittle and CMC and less than Ayuk. I don't know. How are you feeling about Ayuk, Dad? You can get him in the 6th round as wide receiver 29. If he's your wide receiver 3, are you fine with it?
Yeah, I am. I kind of seen him take a little leap in production last year. I know there's a lot of mouths to feed in San Francisco. This is what makes Brock Purdy's job so easy. There's so many different guys, and so many different weapons and things like that. So I am on Brandon Ayuk. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm not going to argue with anyone that is. Like, he's a good player, and like I said, if he's on another team where they don't have all these mouths to feed, then I love him. I can see him getting like 2 or 3 catches a game on this offense, like consistently for a majority of the year, and it's just like probably more than that. Like I can see him basically getting like 3.5 catches a game. He ends the season with like 60, 70 catches, and is that going to translate into 1,000-yard year? Like maybe, but I don't know. He's the guy where we talk about 4 players going in the top 5, 6 rounds. Can they all return value? He's the guy I'm looking at there I'm like, I don't think so. I don't think he's the one I'd be the most worried about returning value. One, because he doesn't play tight end, and two, I just think it's going to be the Debo and McCaffrey show. Of course, there's the value if one of those get hurt, which the odds that one of them do get hurt are pretty high. So that's where I'm at with Ayuk. And then we have, not much else to talk about with the receiver. Juwan Jennings is considered the wide receiver 3. He had his moments last year, but can't count on him. At best, he's going to be like the 5th option on this team. Ray McLeod is a punt returner, special teams guy. Danny Gray is intriguing because he's super fast, but I think he's like hurt again. He was hurt last year a little bit too. He was, I think, like a 3rd-round pick last year. So he's intriguing just because he's super fast. And then Ronnie Bell. Dad, you're familiar with him? Ronnie
Bell, yeah, with the University of Michigan.
Yeah, he's a rookie.
Yeah, I don't know how he's I don't know what's going on with him in training camp and preseason though. So
he's getting a lot of hype. I've heard him getting a lot of hype in preseason. He's a dynasty stash guy. Maybe throw him on your dynasty rosters because he is getting a lot of hype. And, this team could be without Brandon Ayuk next year. He's on a contract year, I'm pretty sure. So things change so much in the NFL. Like Ronnie Bell could find himself in a favorable situation, and he's getting the hype. So, and I think Michigan doesn't do the best job of showcasing their receivers necessarily. They're a run-first team, so good guy to keep in mind. But we'll finish up with George Kittle. Mr. George Kittle, one of the most explosive tight ends in the NFL. Has been a mainstay as a top tight end for a long time. He had a huge year. I forget when it was, like 2018, I think, where he had like 1,200 yards or something. 2018, 1,300, almost 1,400 yards. Last year, it was very different. He was never a big touchdown guy, never had more than 6 touchdowns until last year. He caught 11. Dad, how do you feel about George Kittle? Are you in on drafting George Kittle? I think you have to take him end of the 4th, beginning of the 5th round.
I know. I know he's top 5 tight end. So if you want him, it seems like after Kittle, then the pickings. Then you have those middle of the road tight ends that we talk about all the time. So it's just again, Hawkinson, Andrews, Kelsey. I know I'm missing one other guy.
Hawkinson, Andrews, Kelsey. Pitts is the next on that list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Kittle. Kittle is a good player. I know he seems to fit their offense pretty well, and he's one of those Iowa tight ends. So I think I might pass on him though in the 4th or 5th round, I guess.
Yeah, you already know my tight end strategy by this point. If it's not Andrews or Kelsey, I'm probably not taking Kittle in the 4th or 5th round. I'd much rather Kyle Pitts or even Goddard. Just more potential for me. Too many mouths to feed. If he's that touchdown guy like he was last year, okay, I can see the path for him. Again, we talked about it. If I had to put an order of guys not returning value, these 4 guys, it's going to be Ayuk and then Kittle for me, and then Debo and then McCaffrey. But Ayuk and Kittle are the 2 guys I'm worried about the most because you are taking them in the 5th round, 6th round, or higher. Kittle has a better path to returning value because he's a tight end and you don't need to do as much as a tight end. But yeah, the guy's super explosive. He's one of the few tight ends that can house it's like him and Kelsey that can take a 60-yard dump off pass, to the house. Very important for the team, but yeah, I'm out on Kittle. I'm there with you, Dad. So no one else to talk about in the tight end room. Cameron Latu, if you want to do a deep dynasty stash, rookie this year, I think 4th round pick or something. Someone to stash dynasty wise, but other than that, that's it. Chad, do you think 49ers, are they going to make it to the Super Bowl this year, win the Super Bowl finally this year?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. You know, they're going to win the NFC East or West, and you know, they're gonna make a run in the playoffs. So a lot of it depends on injuries, you know, and you know we've seen how their season got scuttled by injuries last year, and they always seem to have a lot of injuries. You said they're like the Chargers, but yeah, the Chargers never seem to come back from their injuries. The 49ers always seem to have somebody with the next man up, and you know I attribute some of that to the coaching, but
Yeah.
you know the Chargers don't have a coach. But anyway, that's another topic.
Yeah, it's definitely a testament to the coaching of Shanahan that you know he's next man up and they're always there. So I mean, even in that playoff game where they lost their quarterbacks, they didn't have a quarterback. Like that game was still very close until the end, until like the mid third quarter. So yeah, but anyways, we're gonna finish up there. We are, I believe, now 4 teams away from finishing. So that will be finished up this week. We are on to the Seattle Seahawks in our next video. So we'll catch you guys